we're slaves to technology, aren't we? A small side of the thing about Megatokyo is that when I started Megatokyo, this was back in 2000, and there was a couple of, a year or so in, one of the characters had a cell phone. And I, of course, went and picked the most cool cell phone I could find, and this was a Japanese cell phone. It had a camera on it. It was something else. I mean, you gotta remember, this is back before cell phones had cameras on them. So, and the silly thing is that Piro is still carrying that phone, which was, at the time, cutting edge technology. But of course, here we are, almost 20 years later, it's an antique, but he still carries it, so. But I'm getting disconnected here. But when it comes to the nature of the work, I started doing this webcomic mainly because, hey, my friend Rodney's like, hey, I think we should do a webcomic together. I'm like, okay, so what are we going to do? How about the two of us get stuck in Japan? Okay. So, I mean, that's literally all the development there was when we started it. And we did a couple of comics and made a few jokes and about a few things. And he was friends with the guys from Penny Arcade, and they sort of linked our comic. And the next thing we knew, oh, we've got people reading our comic. What do we do? I guess we should do more. So we just sort of kept going at it. And what's really funny is one of the first jokes in the comic, which was about lead speak. The confession for me is I actually didn't understand the joke. I didn't realize what the joke actually was until kind of years later. I'm like, oh, that's an airplane joke, isn't it? Which is really sad that I didn't even pay close enough attention to what I was doing. But people seemed to get it at the time, so that's what mattered. But with webcomics, the nice thing about it, when you talk about the difference between a traditional comic artist or a traditional comic artist, especially, because I was not really a fan of American comics or superhero comics, Marvel, DC stuff ever. I mean, it's just never really appealed to me that much. It's good stuff, and I respect it to a great degree, but it just wasn't the type of thing that I like to read. I was always interested in sort of that weird sort of independent comics that had the little slice of life stuff going on in it. And of course, when manga started showing up in here in the States, I mean, the first time I came across Maison Ikkoku, it was like, this comic's nothing but slice of life. And this was like perfect, it was wonderful. So that's kind of what always been my influence over the years. So, but as far as traditional comics in America, they've got writers, you've got pencilers, you've got inkers, you've got all the comic process is broken down, there's lots of people involved in it. Whereas if you're making your own comic, it's like, do I break into the industry? Do I want to draw superhero comics? And that's what a lot of people tried to do. In my case, I just ended up wanting to make manga. And in Japan, even though there's always assistants and stuff like that, it was still something where it was like one creator. Well, whether it was true that it was always one creator or not, that was the impression you get. So I just started doing it and making the whole thing. And I do it all in pencil. And I tried inking them initially, but the inking, I always lost something in it, so I went back to pencil. And because I was scanning stuff, and the reason that you ink stuff is for printing, it makes it easier, right? Well, advances in printing means that you can do pencil and have it published, but even though traditionally there's this insistence that it be inked, that it be black and white, that it be zip toned or whatever, those things, I didn't know any of the rules, so I didn't know I was breaking them all at the time. But by doing it in the web, I wasn't relying on having to sell the comic itself to a group of, to publishers or to a group of people who would decide, do we want to invest in this comic or not? And that's what you used to have to do, either publish it yourself and try to get it out to people through the mail or at going to conventions or science fiction conventions, whatever, or a publisher sort of takes a chance on your work. With the web, you were able to put up a comic on the web and people could find it. There was nothing, people could go to the General Motors site with the same ease that you could go to my own site, which is what's great about the web. And I know that we're used to it today, but this was an astonishing thing back then. And over time, just a lot of people would come and read, and they'd keep reading. So that's sort of how I got going with it. And I work in pencil. I've always worked in what just works for me. I never had to fit it into what the industry standards were, which were inking and all this other stuff. So, and also just the nature of it. When I started doing it, it was a little bit like a gag comic, but then there were times that I wanted to be more serious. And the first time I had a comic, it was the Piro gave Kimiko the rail cart, if people remember that comic. There was no joke, because every comic had a joke to it. Every comic stood alone. I actually got emails, including from some people who were kind of also putting the comic on their business, on their site through GameSpy or whatever. And they're like, well, where's the joke? And I said, there was no joke. Well, how can there be no joke? This is, we're supposed to be a joke. I said, well, some comics aren't funny. And they just couldn't understand the concept. And I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. But, people get sort of tied into what they think, they demand what things should be. Of course, these days it's not a problem, but, back then I definitely got some reaction to that they didn't like that. And then I'm like, okay, fine, well, I'll make fewer funny comics and just even do, kind of commit more to being all emo and emotional with love stories and stuff like that. But the balance that I actually had with what Rodney helped provide with Largo and the other stuff, I think if I had gone purely with the type of comic I would have made, I don't think it would have worked so well because it would have been so immersive in what I was into that it wouldn't have had the spark of all this other stuff that has nothing to do with me, kind of my own way of looking at things, but it forced me to balance between the two in ways that I think made the comic a lot more interesting in the long run.
Rule 3 of Fred arting. By facing criticism, spite them by doubling down.
That's true. I mean, anyone here ever created something and had people be nasty to you about the work that you've done, trolled you about it, kind of criticize, harsh criticism, like you really need to stop drawing because you are wasting your time, you will never be able to draw, that sort of thing. I have a philosophy about a few things. Now, first of all, I take criticism very personally. I can get 10,000 or 1,000 messages about how wonderful something is. I get one person that says, no, that kind of sucks. I will focus on that message. And that's and it'll upset me for weeks, which is unhealthy, but we all do it. But one thing about people in general is that I think the main thing that everybody wants to do in life is to have some impact on other people, right? You want to do something people to notice you, people to have some sort of impact or some sort of reaction from other people from yourself. And a lot of people, have chosen to produce creative things, to be creative about it and make things that people can react to and can impact their lives in a positive way. But then we've got a lot of people who they get a lot of joy out of trolling and getting a rise out of people. And, if you can upset somebody very greatly, you've impacted their life. I don't know if that's what I really want, but for some people that seems to be a perfectly fine goal. So yeah, you have to take what people say often with a grain of salt. And also, I got a criticism once. It was great. Some guy wrote this huge piece about what was wrong with Megatokyo, and all the things he was pointing out were the things about. Well, basically, he was criticizing manga and everything about manga that he hated, and that's why Megatokyo sucked. And it's like, okay, so you don't like manga. Well, obviously you're not going to like my stuff. But it was like he was criticizing it because it didn't appeal to him. And it's like, well, it appeals to plenty of other people. So, okay, fine, you don't like it, whatever, So, okay. Anyone else have any questions or thoughts or before I start coughing and really ruining this little thing today? So
aside from just flat out terrifying, how does it feel to have a 20-year-old project and all that legacy sort of waving around?
Well, there are a bunch of things about it. The first thing I'd say is, one problem is I have an incredibly stable reader base. People who don't want to deal with, who need instant gratification and it has to be the hot thing, those people are long gone. I mean, you've got people who've just been enjoying it, they pop in and they read it, and most readers don't seem to be going anywhere. I mean, and it's an incredibly supportive group too, over the years, and it surprises me how many of them there are. But one problem with a comic that has been running this long, and actually movie theaters and TV, producers or people who produce multiple pieces of work, is if you get between 3 volumes of something and you start to go into 4 or 5, it starts to fall off. In fact, I think even the TV producers have discovered this. It's like, a couple of seasons is good, but once you get into like season 6, it starts to fall off because the amount of effort it takes a new viewer or a new reader to kind of get into the story, a lot of people look at it and go, no, I'm not going to bother. That's too much work, which is really sad in some ways. But the biggest trouble with Megatokyo right now is that people look at it and go, wow, this is neat. And oh my God, there's 1,600 pages, and some people look at that and go, sweet, I got something to do for a while. But it's amazing how many people look at that and go, oh, that's too much.
We've
So-
been trying to tell you, this is the time for your gritty, bloody reboot.
I know, I'm working on it. I have to say that early on, when Rodney was starting to get frustrated with things, he's like, okay, can we have this character, and this character get run over by a bus so they're dead and gone, and then we can go back to something simpler. So there have been times there's been some desire by some people to exterminate and eliminate characters. So my answer to that has always been, well, I got a new character I want to add. And then,
It's true.
well, and everybody, you've seen the meme with the guy with his girlfriend, and he's doing the whoo behind him at the attractive girl in the foreground, and and it's sort of like I've actually made a little meme of this. It's like established Megatokyo storylines that need to be finished. And then in the foreground, I've got new Megatokyo character Fred came up with last week. I mean, that's me. I mean, that's, in fact, was it XKCD that did that? I think that comic was that a new character?
XKCD was the one that is like, they were talking about the set, they were the ones that baked you a cake because
Oh,
they were
that's
so upset
right.
about.
It was a guest comic.
It was a guest comic,
that
somebody did.
brought up, the new character that doesn't even have a name yet.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so they joked about that. I did actually get a chance to meet Randall Monroe recently, which was actually highly amusing, because how many people can say that they are mentioned in an XKCD comic? Not too many. I mean, there is one that they presented me with a cake. Cool. And I had never actually talked to the guy before, but he did a presentation in Ann Arbor, so I got some tickets to go, and my son and I went, and they got his new book, and there's a big line to get book signs and stuff, and so I just put down my name, Fred Gallagher, and I didn't say a word. I'm just like, and he's talking to my son, and Jack's asking some really interesting questions because he likes science and stuff like that. And he gets to my book, and he goes to write the name, and he's like, it was like he recognized the name because it went back far enough. So that was kind of cool. That was fun. It had been a long time since he'd done that, so I'm glad he remembered. And then he drew me a stick figure giving me a cake. So I was cool with that. So. Okay, and as far as the legacy, one of the things about doing Megatokyo as far as the length of it is that, I keep coming up with new story ideas and new project ideas, but what ends up happening is I always end up folding them into the comic itself, which is why it sort of keeps going, and sort of, if you read it, I mean, is it at least stayed interesting for those of you who've read it over time? So, we've all read the stuff that starts to get really repetitious after a while, and it's not interesting anymore because they really are trying to keep the same theme going. But with Megatokyo, I've constantly been sort of changing and adding and adjusting and having things change, and it's been I wouldn't be perfect, but it's almost like it reinvents itself a little bit here and there and adds stuff and subtracts stuff, and that's kind of why it's maintained its thing as it goes. It's one of those things that I've absolutely shot it in the knees and kneecapped it real bad for ever being a good media property because it just goes all over the place. So trying to get a handle on that for anything other than the comic I'm doing is probably impossible.
So it's supernatural?
H.P. Lovecraft would love to use the structure of my story as something horrifying, as a horrible beast, so.
I don't think Freddie understood the reference.
Oh, well, I'm ignoring him, so I do that sometimes. Yes, sir.
So for the next project, are you going to do this kind of long storyline again, or are you going to do shorter, or you might do something more like let's say, I don't know if you're familiar with JoJo Bizarre Adventure, but
Yeah.
you do like a little soft reboot for every...
For the record, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. If everybody thinks that everybody's familiar with JoJo's, right? It's got a new anime that's running recently, and that's what a lot of people have seen. But the manga itself, when I went to Japan in 1996 or 1995, that was actually in the Shonen Jump magazines. It's been running for that long.
Yeah,
It's an old.
older than me, and I'm 32.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. It's an old comic, so I like JoJo's because it's like it's such older stuff, but at the same time, it's like come around, and now it's like really cool and stuff like that. But
Megatokyo is JoJo Bizarre Adventure dating sim.
Yeah, hey. Yeah, it kind of is. It's Pierrot's Bizarre Adventure, and it's actually all of them Bizarre Adventure. But as far as other projects, when before I started Megatokyo, I was working on something called Warmth, which was a comic idea that there was a story that had these elements to it, and things were going to go certain ways, and there's certain stuff, and that was what I was going to do. And then Rodney pestered me about the Megatokyo thing. It's like, fine, whatever. So I started doing that on the side with the idea that I would start doing Warmth as soon as I got a little practice with Megatokyo. Okay, 20 years later, what happened is over time, a lot of the ideas I had for Warmth actually got absorbed into Megatokyo, became part of the Megatokyo storyline. And some of the key characters with Warmth are actually still there and still floating with what I might do with them. And I've actually got like 30 pages of this thing mapped out and drawn out and ready to go. And at some point, if I can ever get to a stable place, you know, we're looking at something that I'm going to post on Webtoons or whatever, and it's just as a new project. And I think people are ready to see something new. And as far as I'd like to have something a little better planned out, but at the same time, my approach to things is so chaotic, I don't know how well that would work. Because I literally will, he's laughing over here, because he listens to me agonize over these comics sometimes. People ask me, how far out do you have the comic planned? I'm like, well, I'm not sure what I'm doing for the next one, which is often kind of the case. I mean, there's sort of a general idea of some direction, but often things will, as I'm sort of drawing things or sketching things, that's where the determination of what's going to happen next comes from. Because I'll draw the characters, and those characters and their expressions will often kind of set directions. And I've had the comic direction change drastically based on some expressions. And then sometimes, like there was in a recent chapter where the zombie horde of people chasing Pierrot and Miho, originally they were supposed to get away. But then I realized what I had done was had gotten way out of hand. I'm thinking, there's absolutely no way she's going to get away. And that changed the direction of the story right there, which really screwed me up because some things happened that I hadn't thought would happen till a long time later. So it's a little bit like life. I mean, I think life happens. I mean, you may have some plans about things, but you don't know what's really going to happen the next day, and that sort of happens with the story a lot.
Don't let him lie to you. It's not that he doesn't know what's going to happen in the next page. He doesn't know what's going to happen in the next frame.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, ma'am.
Are you planning to repost Megatokyo on something like Webtoons or something that makes it easier for people to read on mobile or something?
Can I do that?
Yeah. Why couldn't you?
I've actually never thought about doing that, to be honest with you. I mean, the digital stuff, wow, that's an interesting idea.
I just figured you didn't want to do the work of compiling it. I didn't realize you didn't even know it was an option.
Well, it's already done. I didn't think that you would do something like that. Or can you?
There's a big
But-
audience on that platform.
But isn't that cheating?
No?
No, actually, I mean, you know, I know this sounds insane, but I've never actually considered it. But you know, maybe that's a way for newer readers to kind of get hooked, get reading it. You know, that's not a bad idea. So, okay, well, hey, I'm open to that. I don't have a problem with that. As far as the rights for it, like for instance, publishing rights and stuff like that, you get some stuff where digital stuff is all mine to decide what to do with.
I'm just trying to judge if this would be a good enough gauge for a garrote wire.
You've never suggested this to me.
Because I didn't even think you would. Because I just figured it was one of those things, like, you know what, he's busy, I'm not going to bother him. I was not aware that you didn't even know it was an option.
I thought I had to do something new. Oh, okay, so I'm sorry. We don't want to get into my personal neuroticisms with, I have some neuroses about some things that they happen. I'm sorry. So, but I mean, the truth is that actually is not a bad idea because, I mean, originally it was like Megatokyo, you got to send people to it, because this is 10 years ago thinking, where you got to get people to go to your main website because you want to read it there because you've got advertising, you've got numbers, all this other stuff. But these days, I mean, I post it to Twitter, I post it to Facebook, I post it all over the place because in the end, you just want people to read it. And it's so distributed now. I mean, it's not something that has to go to your website. I mean, the website's just a repository, really, at this point. And that's where people go when they think of it. But most people will read it as they come through their feeds, which are, I mean, I probably should do more, to be honest with you, but I'm not the most social network savvy guy. I mean, come on, social? I was the most reclusive, non-social person in the world. You expect me to understand social networking? I mean, come on, guys, you know? I'm surprised anybody does, to be honest with you. But not a bad idea. I wouldn't have a problem doing that. So I don't know if people would yell at me, but that's okay. Maybe it's
I mean,
okay.
that's what, like,
Okay.
just about 5 or 6 webcomics I know personally. They're just supporting their old archives and websites. Comfort and Adam do it for both Uniques and Rainbow in the Dark.
And you've never suggested this. Okay, moving on. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments on my
There might
abjects?
be 1 or 2 people in the room on the edge of their seat. The answer to the question was bubblegum crisis.
Oh, yes. Does anybody know, what is this, a Jeopardy thing? So anybody know what the question was for bubblegum crisis?
Right before his phone rang, he said, "Does anybody know where Megatokyo comes from?"
Yes. Megatokyo.com. Does anyone remember this? And you got to remember, there are people who are fans of another series called Bubblegum Crisis, really hated me and everything I've done for many years. And does anyone know why? Because, does anyone remember Bubblegum Crisis? It was actually a fairly popular anime series of, they were original video animations at the time, so it's good stuff.
There was a TV series remake
TV
later
series,
on,
so-
but it's a very old.
Anyway, it happens in Megatokyo. And that's where Megatokyo comes from. And that's why Rodney owned a website called Megatokyo.com.
Also Largo.
And Largo is also I think he's one of the cop characters in it.
He's the villain.
He's the villain, okay. Oh, he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
I forgot that, that's right. So Largo and the whole Megatokyo.com thing essentially come from a great Bubblegum Crisis. So if you're a Bubblegum Crisis fan and you're looking up Megatokyo, you don't get any Bubblegum Crisis at all. And they hate that, so.
I think there was a older anime that was called Megatokyo, if I remember right, and it had a character that they got the inspiration for M. Bison from Street Fighter from, but I don't know.
Well, that's entirely possible. You know what the other Megatokyo is? And I'd be ashamed of any Pokemon fans in here who don't know this. Well, okay, we're good. We're with my people here. So, no. The Pokemon Center in Tokyo is called Megatokyo. So basically, any mention of I get alerts all the time for Megatokyo, but it's actually the Pokemon Center, so it's very depressing. So, okay. Any other thoughts or questions or comments? Yes.
What kept you going for 20 years?
Stupidity, stubbornness and stupidity. I do get that sort of, wow, I'm amazed you're still doing this. And it's a little bit like why I never thought of reposting it to other webtoons or whatnot. It's a little bit like, I'm not going to stop. I mean, why would I ever stop? There's no point to stopping. So it's a little bit of stubbornness. And also, I mean, really a lot of this I do for myself. I mean, sometimes, when you're fully supporting yourself on it, and, the thing is even when I was fully supporting myself with, Megatokyo is the main thing that I was doing, I still really, it was merchandise and selling from the store and having to print shirts, and I spent more time trying to do the merchandise side of things than I had time to do the drawing. So it was always a struggle trying to support yourself. I mean, if I had Megatokyo popular today, and I could have like the tech Patreon where I could bring in like the kind of readership I had back then, oh, it would be no problem, it'd be awesome. But we didn't have that back then. People didn't support things directly like they do these days. And I have a great Patreon and I get a lot of support, but I'm also dealing with a legacy audience of readers who are very stable, which is good. But I mean, the venues where you can earn support these days is so much more robust than it was back then. But, at the same time, it's, I've had my ups and downs. I've honestly never really thought, oh, I'm sick of this and I want to end it. Except actually after Rodney and I split, and I was getting so much criticism, and people were just lashing out at me so hard that I decided I was ending it. That's it. I've had it a year later. I can't take this anymore. So I started up a whole series of arcs, and I'm like, I'm going to drive this to the end, which is, of course, what made the story end up being pretty decent after a while, because instead of just fiddle farting around with stuff, I started to dive into things because I wanted to end it. But that's what made it kind of cool after a while. It made it sort of work. So for me, it's there's a certain amount of enjoyment in making it, and honestly, I kind of want to know where it goes myself, because I'm not just, I don't have a preset determination where it goes, and all I have to do is the work to get to the end. I don't know how other comic artists or writers do that, because you already know what's going to happen, or you're doing all this work, but it's like you get nothing out of it. It's all about just, you know, getting other people know. For me, I'm just as interested to find out what's going to happen as everybody else, which is insane, I know.
Well, I'll
But
answer
it's-
that question. We wonder that exact same thing about you.
So, but no, I love doing this, I guess, and it's just a natural part of what I do. It doesn't mean it's not a struggle. And what I'll do is if I have, you know, a week where it's just not happening, I will take the time. If I deadlines, what are the deadlines? Don't even exist. They don't even whoosh. They're dead, you know, because to me, in the end, I'd rather have a comic that when you go back and read the last 3 years of work, you may be like, wow, he did a lot of work in that 1 year, because it only looks like a year's worth of work. But the comics are really not so bad, as opposed to when you're really trying to rush things, you end up making comics that look terrible, you know. And I like to think there's not too many in there that do that. So,
No joke. Dark Horse, in the process of waiting for Volume 7, has basically just said, you know what? When you're done, just give it to us. We'll just.
that's just it. They didn't even, when I said, hey, you know, I'm actually almost ready to do book 7, and my editor, Phil, came back from it and he said, well, that was the quickest approval I ever got. So, because they've been waiting on that for a long time, so.
They
But
know you by now.
They know me by now. How sad is that? It's really sad, so.
So, correction on that, the movie or anime I was thinking about was called Doom Megalopolis.
Megalopolis, okay. Okay, yeah, see, no, for the record, Mega, if you put Mega and Tokyo together, originally I spelled it using Mega, the katakana for Mega, and then the kanji for Tokyo. And my Japanese friends were like, no, that is not how you do it. I'm like, well, why not? Because no, it doesn't work that way. I still don't understand why it doesn't work that way. So when I spell out Megatokyo, I actually have to do the whole thing in katakana. I don't know why. So I love it when I'm working with stuff and my entire career is built around it. I don't even know how it works.
The best response I've been able to get in regards to that, because in the way that you would do it,
Yeah,
it would be like putting down LOL with absolutely no context.
yeah, true. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Three things, actually. I suspect that's probably because mixing scripts is bad with hiragana and katakana.
Yes, probably.
Kanji.
Yeah.
Sounds like the writing style thing is pantsers versus plotters.
What is that?
Yes.
People who write by the seat of their pants and let the characters
Right.
dictate what's happening versus people who plot everything ahead of time
Right.
and then flesh everything out.
Yep.
Similar to the issues between the guys who did the Game of Thrones TV series versus George R.R. Martin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then my actual question is, what do you think of the Comics Chameleon app?
The what?
It's an app for reading webcomics on iOS and Android.
You know, I don't think my stuff is on there. You know, which
It's not yet.
it's not yet. So
Of course it's not. You don't even know the webtoons exist.
I know, but you know, apps for reading comics. I mean, as long as it's, you know, are we talking about web comics, or are we talking about like scanlations or non-legal content per technically?
No, webcomics.
So it's just okay. Yeah, I mean, if it's a legit approach and they've got stuff up there and it's approved and the guys who are you know, great, I'm all for that. In fact,
David Willis' stuff is on there, for example.
okay, yeah, no, I for years, in fact, my website, if you've been to it, it has that weird thing. You know how you click on the comic to go to the next one? Mine does not have that. You have to use the next button. That's how old the web design is. In fact, I like to think that I'm kind of retro. I'm so retro, it's like people get nostalgia when they go to my website because it is literally that old. Still works good, but there's like some modern things that people are used to, back and forth arrows for paging through the comics. That's why having a reader, whether it's a web reader or like a app, I'm totally for that sort of thing, especially if you have a lot of content.